Alan Watts never tried to build a philosophical system in the traditional Western sense. He wasn't interested in erecting intellectual cathedrals brick by brick, complete with footnotes and buttresses. Instead, he preferred something closer to jazz, improvisational, circular, responsive to the moment. His philosophy doesn't march forward in straight lines, it spirals. And that spiral, once you step into it, subtly changes how you understand yourself, the world, and the strange dance between the two. At the heart of Watts' thought is a single, destabilizing suggestion: the way we normally think about ourselves is wrong. Not morally wrong. Structurally wrong. As if we've mistaken the role we're playing for the entire play itself. Watts' most famous target is the ego, but not the ego as psychology textbooks describe it. He means the felt sense of being a separate, isolated entity trapped inside a bag of skin. The everyday assumption that I am a thinker inside my head, steering a body through an external world. For Watts, this idea is not merely inaccurate, it's the root of modern anxiety. He borrows heavily from Hindu Vedanta and Zen Buddhism here. The ego, he argues, is a social and linguistic construct. A useful one, yes, but not a fundamental reality. Language carves the world into nouns: self, other, mind, body. But reality itself is not made of nouns. It's made of verbs. You don't have an experience of the universe. You are what the universe is doing at this point where you happen to be. The ego is like a whirlpool in a river. It has a recognizable shape, a name, even a personality, but it isn't separate from the water. Trying to defend it, solidify it, or make it permanent is like trying to nail down a wave. And yet, modern society trains us to do exactly that. Careers, reputations, achievements, even spiritual progress become ego projects. Watts found this deeply ironic: the moment you try to improve yourself, you've already assumed the self is broken. One of Watts' most joyful ideas comes from Hindu philosophy, Ilila, the cosmic play. The universe is not a machine grinding toward a goal. It's a game, a dance, a piece of music that exists for the sake of its own performance. Western thought, obsessed with productivity and purpose, struggles with this. We ask, what is the universe for? Watts replies, gently amused, what is a song for? You don't rush through Beethoven to get to the final note. The point is the unfolding. In this view, existence has no external justification, and that is precisely what makes it meaningful. The universe isn't trying to get anywhere. It's exploring what it's like to be this, right now, from every possible angle. Humans, then, are not accidents or intrusions into nature. We are one of nature's styles. Just as the apple tree apples, the universe peoples. This reframes life's struggles in a radical way. Suffering doesn't disappear, but it loses its cosmic insult quality. Pain is no longer evidence that something has gone wrong with existence. It's part of the rhythm. Watts had a knack for spotting psychological traps that feel intuitive but backfire spectacularly. One of his sharpest insights is what he called the backwards law: the more you try to force certain experiences, happiness, security, peace, the more elusive they become. Trying to be happy is a bit like trying to fall asleep by force. The effort itself is the obstacle. This is because life is fundamentally uncontrollable. Not in a nihilistic way, but in a musical one. You can participate, respond, improvise, but you cannot dominate the score. Modern anxiety arises from pretending otherwise. Watts saw Western culture as deeply confused on this point. We worship control, prediction, and mastery, yet we are biological processes embedded in an unpredictable cosmos. The result is a chronic tension between what we are and what we think we should be. Letting go, in what sense, is not resignation. It's intelligence. It's aligning your expectations with reality rather than fighting the universe for not behaving like a spreadsheet. Watts had an unusual way of talking about death that avoided both morbid dread and comforting fantasy. Death, he argued, is not the opposite of life. It's the opposite of birth. Life has no opposite. From the perspective of the ego, death looks like annihilation. From the perspective of the universe, it looks like transformation. The same process that appears as me right now once appeared as a baby, and before that as something else entirely. Time, in this framework, is not a conveyor belt dragging us from past to future. It's a conceptual tool. Reality only ever happens now. The past is memory, the future anticipation, both thoughts occurring in the present. Watts loved pointing out the absurdity of postponing life for later. Waiting to be happy once things settle down. They never do. The music is already playing. Perhaps Watts' most controversial move was to strip religion of literal belief while preserving its experimental core. He treated myths, gods, and rituals not as factual claims about the universe, but as symbolic languages pointing towards states of consciousness. To mistake religious symbols for concrete descriptions of reality, he argued, is like confusing the menu for the meal. This made him an unlikely bridge between mysticism and modern skepticism. One could reject supernaturalism entirely and still find profound value in meditation, ritual, and spiritual insight, not as dogma but as psychology and art. Watts didn't want followers. He wanted listeners who eventually realized they didn't need him. Watts spoke to a world undergoing identity collapse, traditional religion weakening, scientific materialism rising, and individuals left wondering what, if anything, gives life meaning. His answer was neither nihilism nor blind faith, but a third option, wonder without authority. He offered permission to relax into existence without demanding that it justify itself. To stop pretending to be an isolated ego struggling against reality, and instead recognize oneself as a temporary, luminous expression of it. That recognition doesn't end suffering or confusion. But it changes the tone of the experience. Life becomes less of a courtroom drama and more of a cosmic improvisation. And perhaps that was Watts' greatest gift, not answers, but a shift in posture. From clenched fists to open hands. From the need to win at life to the realization that you were never separate from it in the first place. The universe is not something you are in. It's something you are doing. The most radical thing Watts ever suggested was not mystical at all. It was structural. He proposed that the division between observer and observed is a useful fiction, not a feature of reality. Western thought, especially post-Descartes, is built on the assumption that there is a thinker inside the world, peering out at it. I think, therefore I am quietly smuggles in an entire metaphysical architecture, a mental subject surveying an external object. Watts thought this was the original conceptual fracture. From Zen and Advaita Vedanta, he borrowed a subtler picture: experience does not belong to a self. The self is a pattern within experience. Hearing does not require a hearer separate from sound. Seeing does not require a seer behind the eyes. These are grammatical habits masquerading as metaphysics. This is why Watts loved to say the universe isn't a thing, it's an event. The self, then, is not an entity that persists through time. It is a temporally stabilized vibration, like a standing wave in water. You can name it, measure it, narrate it, but you cannot isolate it without killing the phenomenon. This insight quietly detonates almost every Western anxiety. Watts understood that humans don't cling to ego out of vanity alone. We cling out of fear. A process cannot be secured. A thing can be defended. So we turn ourselves into objects. We create identities, careers, belief systems, moral ledgers, even spiritual resumes. We try to become finished. The tragedy is that the universe has no finished states. It only pauses long enough to look like one. Buddhism calls this anicca, impermanence. Watts translated it into modern terms: everything you love is changing while you are loving it. The problem is not change. The problem is pretending there shouldn't be any. This is where his thinking cuts deeper than self-help or pop spirituality. Watts didn't promise comfort. He offered clarity. The clarity is uncomfortable because it reveals that security was never an option to begin with. But then comes the twist: once you stop demanding permanence, impermanence stops being a threat. A melody doesn't bother you because it ends. Its ending is what gives it shape. Watts had a sly way of dismantling free will without turning people into nihilists. He pointed out that we imagine choice as a kind of internal ghost, an uncaused cause inside the skull, issuing commands. But when you examine an actual decision, what do you find? Preferences, memories, instincts, cultural conditioning, bodily states. The decision happens. You don't stand outside the universe pulling levers. This disturbed people until Watts reframed it. If your decisions are expressions of the whole system, genetics, culture, environment, then you are not a puppet. You are the universe choosing from where it stands. A wave does not control the ocean. But the ocean is fully present in the wave's motion. Responsibility, in this view, is not cosmic blame. It is responsiveness. You are accountable in the same way a dancer is accountable to the rhythm, not by coercion, but by participation. Watts was merciless toward spiritual ambition. Trying to become enlightened, he argued, is like a knife trying to cut itself. The seeker assumes separation from what is already the case. This is why Zen masters laugh, shout, or hit their students with sticks, not out of cruelty, but to short-circuit the endless conceptual loop. You cannot achieve being what you already are. This is also why Watts insisted that genuine awakening is often anticlimactic. No fireworks. No permanent bliss. Just the sudden recognition that the cosmic drama you were desperately trying to escape is the same one you were enjoying all along. The ego wants transcendence. Reality offers intimacy. Watts rejected the moralized universe of good versus evil as an oversimplification born of fear. Drawing from Taoism, he emphasized complementarity, light and dark, order and chaos, life and death are not enemies. They are dance partners. A purely orderly universe would be sterile. A purely chaotic one unrecognizable. Meaning arises at the edge where structure and surprise meet. This is why utopias fail. They aim to eliminate friction, not realizing that friction is what allows movement. Watts saw modern society desperately trying to sand down existence into something safe and manageable, only to discover that boredom and anxiety rush in to fill the vacuum. The universe, it turns out, does not want to be safe. It wants to be interesting. Watts often spoke of reality as a joke, not in the sense of ridicule, but of surprise. A good joke depends on violated expectations. So does life. The cosmic joke is that the thing you're searching for, a meaning, self, purpose, is the activity doing the searching. Once you see this, the joke lands. Laughter follows not because nothing matters, but because everything was heavier than it needed to be. This is why Watts refused solemnity. Solemnity, to him, was ego in formal wear. Alan Watts was not teaching Eastern philosophy. He was not teaching mysticism. He was not teaching religion. He was teaching dehypnosis. He wanted you to notice the invisible assumptions shaping your suffering, that you are separate, that life must justify itself, that control equals safety, that permanence equals meaning. Remove those assumptions, and the world doesn't vanish. It breathes. You don't become passive. You become fluid. You don't lose responsibility. You lose unnecessary guilt. You don't dissolve into nothing. You dissolve into participation. And in that participation, something quietly radical occurs. Life stops feeling like a problem to be solved. And starts feeling like a reality to be danced with. Not because the universe finally makes sense, but because you stop demanding that it do so on your terms. The music was never waiting for you to understand it. It was waiting for you to listen.